In today's video, we are going to create UI elements that you see in video games. I've been playing a lot of PS5 games, and what I noticed is there are a lot of UI elements that they designed that are custom made. Let's just go ahead and use Figma and see if we can recreate them. In this video game, the pop-up is a black pop-up, and as you can see, there's a transparent background. There is a bit of a drop shadow, the white drop shadow. Let's just go ahead in Figma, take a screenshot of this page and try to recreate this. So now we're in Figma, the overlay, the background gets darker. That's the first thing you can notice between these two images. The pop-up, when it appears, it has a border. So if we want to design our pop-up, we need to have a border, a drop shadow. The font that they're using is, serif font. If you see a lot of application, they don't use serif font that much. They mostly use like sans serif font. So we need to keep that in mind. Select these two fonts in Figma and try to choose a font that is sans serif. Sorry, my bad, a serif font. I always get these two confused. So if you do decide to choose a serif font, you don't have the ability to filter using Figma. You can filter by Google Fonts, but what we can do is go to Google Fonts. So what matters to me is the name of the font. So in Google, if I like the PT serif, I would go ahead and search for it in Figma and try to use the PT serif, or we can use Noto serif. So I would select both of these fonts, and the first step is to search for Noto serif, and I think Noto serif is good. When it comes to any design elements in Figma, I always use auto layout. So I would shift an A to create an auto layout, call this Modal, select dark background. We can use the eyedrop to select a color from the actual game, but we know that this is a dark element, which is 000. Maybe reduce the opacity to like 80%, and for the typographies we flip that and we go and select white. In this example we have 88, which is very gigantic, so we can go with 36, and then for the text we will go with 24. I'll go ahead and try to center align the font, center align the other one. Line height between this one is a bit awkward, so what I would do is I would just select auto, and auto would give it a line height automatically based on whatever it sees. If you didn't know, you can actually use percentage in Figma. So here I would just go with 150%, and percentage also gives it the same auto look. And then here if I go to 100%, it just gives it the percentage. When it comes to coding, you have the ability in CSS to basically use percentage, and also since we're using auto layout, I can give it some padding. What I need to do is duplicate that and try to bring my modal on top. Since we have the modal and the background, we can do Shift and A. Background is using the image, which is good, and inside of it we are using the modal. So here we can call this the game UI. So the next thing that I need to do is to design these nice borders. So I'll add a stroke. We want to make the stroke white. We now need to add this two lines above and below the walk your own path, walk thy own path. I don't know how to pronounce that, but let's select this one. We can also give this auto to reduce the line height. And if you take a look at the left side, we have the gaming UI auto layout, we have the modal. Here we add another auto layout, we can call this header, and in this header we can give it some padding on top and bottom. Let's give it 16, and by giving it padding, now I have the ability to add stroke. And for the stroke, I want to make sure I select white, but this is not the design that I want. I only want the stroke to be from top to bottom. So what I can do is select the stroke, and let's just go ahead and select custom, select 1 pixel at the bottom, 1 pixel at the top. So this will give us the top and bottom stroke that we see here in this UI element. What you notice is the UI element in the game is using a stroke that is, a little bit filled here, also a little bit faded, filled, a little bit faded. What we can do is click on the stroke, and instead of using a fill, which is solid color, we would go ahead and use gradient. And we want to go with linear, so the gradient goes all the way from left to right, and we want to make sure it is white all the way, and in between we add stop point. So here, let's just go ahead and click another stop point. We can make this 0, and you see as soon as we make this 0, let's just hide that, we have this faded effect. So if we play around with the stop point, we can get the ability to make it, you see, filled, and then make it a little bit hidden, filled, hidden. So I'm going to fast forward and make it fill and hidden. So I fast forwarded and made it 50%, and then 0, and then the list goes on. So this is the strokes and the breakpoints that I'm using. So in my opinion, it looks really good. The other two things that we need to add is we need to duplicate this and add 1 out of 1. That's the other UI element that we need to add. We have exit with a circle and X. So this is the other UI element that we need to create. We have exit, and in Figma we can use icons. In this example we go with material symbols, and what I can do is search for example for cancel. We have cancel here, I can click and we have cancel added. So If I make it white, you see that this is exactly like this one. We have a bit rounded, so what I can do is ungroup this one, double click and select all these edges that I have and make them rounded in Figma. Also, I add an auto layout around this. I need to make the background white and the stroke color black. Also auto layout the exit and this one. So if I cut that and paste that here you see that this is aligned actually to 1 to 1. So what I need to do in Figma using auto layout, I need to group the text 1 to 1 and frame. And as soon as I shift and A auto layout this, I need to change the direction. 1 and 1 is placed at the left because we are not using absolute position. Select this one and ignore auto layout. So this way I can align it all the way to the right side. Instead of center, I would go ahead and choose bottom. So right bottom. So this is where I want this to be aligned. And the text, which is this one, I do want it to be aligned to the middle. So what I can do is select this one, align it to the middle. Use Figma's copy properties. So in this example, I would just go with copy properties and then paste them here. Again, just right paste properties. And if I do that, you see I have this similar look and feel design. We can go to the stroke, hide the border top, and now we have the border bottom with the exit, and then the exit if we also make it rounded 50%. And the other thing is now we need to select the game UI and add another fill. So here, this is the background image that is being used. So I can click plus and you see another fill is added to the top. If I move it down, you see it has no effect. So I want to make sure that the black background is added to the top. Maybe I'll go ahead and choose 40%. Since we designed this with auto layout, what I can do is select this auto layout modal that we designed and adjust the sizing in between. So here I would go with 48 pixel. I think if we try to add a drop shadow, which is in this example, this one, we can increase the blur like to 50. And if we try to use white, this is the drop shadow. You see that is being added. It makes it a little bit pop up and use less of opacity. In this example, 60%, which is good in my opinion. So what we need to do is draw a rectangle. So in this example, I would go ahead and draw a rectangle and then I would hide the fill, add the stroke and rotate this to 90 degrees. Sorry, my bad, 45 degrees. So a bit of a mathematical error. So here we have the first rectangle that is added. What we can do is try to retrace this and use, again, if we press K on our keyboard, we are scaling it. If you try to resize this differently, you're actually not resizing it proportionately. So you can press K on your keyboard to scale this proportionately. And then we would just move this here, move that one here. So I have the design created as similar as possible. What I need to do is copy the stroke because we are using stroke for this squares that are rotated. So in this example, I will go ahead and write copy properties and let's select all of them and paste this. So paste properties. So what I need to do is make sure we have stroke all the way across. We can select all of them in linear and reduce the stop points. So this way we are kind of preserving the look and feel, only it's hidden at 10%. So now instead of me grouping this, because if I group this, the spacing is going to be a bit awkward. So what I need to do is use auto layout. So shift and A, as soon as I press auto layout, you see that the spacing is exactly identical. I want everything to be consistent. I can call this squares and I need to use another auto layout to make the borders go all the way across. So if I cut that and paste this, here we have our UI element created. So now I need to make this go all the way, which is fill container, center align this. It's not being center aligned because we have our squares taking all the available space. So we need to make this hug. Now I need to move this all the way to the top. And finally, I need to add the stroke bottom. So I would repeat the same step, which is copy properties, option command and C, and then paste the properties, option command and V. Since we're using auto layout, as soon as I ignore this, it would be pushed to the top. And let's just now test it. Because we're using auto layout to create this, if I now try to bring this at the bottom, if I resize this, we see the image being resized but not the modal, and that's not the behavior we want. So we need to click on the modal and make sure it is set to fill, so it fills the entire available space. If I click on the gaming UI, I notice that there is a bit of a padding, so now you see that the actual modal is being resized. So what I want to do is keep the padding as is, but if I try to now resize this, if I take a closer look, the elements here are being resized because we're using auto layout. The exit here is being resized. If I try to make this larger on the height aspect, it's not being resized. But we don't really want that behavior. We don't want our modal to be gigantic and takes all the available space in the screen. So what I can do is click on the gaming UI and make sure it is center aligned. So regardless of actually it's being resized on the right side or it's being resized from the top and bottom, it always stays like that. And what I do notice is everything is being resized properly except this one. This element, the reason it's not being resized properly because we ignored it using auto layout. So we have this ability to use constraints. So what I need to do, instead of left, I would just do left, top, and right. So this way now, if I try to resize this, you see the element, which is the squares, always stays in the center. So let's hide everything. Now I created the gaming UI. If I resize this from left and right, it actually being resized. We can add a max width. So here, the max width, we can just prevent this from growing. So we can add a max width of 1200. So this way it never grows more than 1200. So if I try to make it grow, it always stays like that. If I try to make it grow from the height, again, the height always stays like that and it's always center. And if I try to make it smaller, you see it being resized proportionately. Let me know in the comments down below what's your thoughts, and don't forget to like and subscribe.